Hi guys, welcome back to the Astro Imaging channel. Tonight's session, I've put out a few pieces of data, and we have some people who are interested in processing it. There were specific challenges involved in the data, and we're going to go over that in a bit. But before we do that, I do want to pull up our image of the week, which oh, I'm sorry, I don't have it where I thought I had it. But the Eric, do you have the image of the week? Do you have that picture nearby? I'm hunting for it right now.
Yes, I do. Hang on, give me a moment.
Boy, this Google stuff is hard to navigate. Oh man, now I'm on YouTube. How did that happen? I'm sorry, guys.
You want me to share this?
Yeah, if you can share, and then I'll flip over to your camera because I'm going to ask you about it. Because Eric Coles is the image of the week with his elephant trunk nebula. Just the tip. But beautiful image. Eric, tell us a little bit about this image.
Well, we got done with a galaxy and was going towards full moon. So Mel Helm and I pondered what to do next and decided we hadn't done any narrowband imaging, and it was just a little before the right time to do it, but we could get about 4 hours a night out of hydrogen alpha, sulfur, and oxygen, and we just went after it. This was the result. We got about, this is, in case anyone doesn't know, this is with the RCOS 16 and the 11002 camera. And this was about, geez, I have to look at the numbers. I think we got 14 hours of luminosity, let me see, 8 hours of sulfur, and only 4 hours of oxygen. But that's really enough because we had good data, and we did it according to JP's tone mapping, which means most of the detail comes from HA. So basically, you just make a color map, a starless color map, you overlay it with HA, you screen on a little bit of the sulfur and the oxygen, and use that as a luminosity layer, and that's what you get. It's kind of a pleasing image. Elephant trunk's one of my favorite, and this was the result. Thanks.
Yep, and I don't think you said it. 16-inch RC, right?
Yeah, 16-inch RCOS with an 11002 camera.
Oh, you did say that. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's a beautiful image. That's what aperture gets you in great skies. You just get that detail.
Aperture in dark skies, Adam.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing. And those two little smudges, Eric and I were joking about it, those two little smudges over on the right side, and then that little wispy dark nebula, they're actually there. Yeah. And I think they're Bach globules. And
when I first saw those things, I'm thinking, oh, we got some kind of an processing artifact. So I went back and looked at some images I took last year, and yeah, they are there.
Yep.
Oh, there we go. They're real things, and it's one measure of the quality of your image if you get a really defined those round spots, those dark nebula.
Yeah, that's a great one. Congrats!
Okay.
Thanks for sharing, and remember, everyone out there, you guys can share your images with us. We'll reshare our contribution thread till we get ourselves more organized with this new website, and then we'll, if you win, you'll be invited onto the show to share some stuff about your images. But right now, I'm going to jump right over to the challenges, and I'm clicking back to my name. Waiting for it to work. There we go. So you YouTubers see my face. All right. You're gonna see my whole screen for a second till I jump into PixInsight, and I'm actually on the wrong one. And I am way ahead of myself. So let me get rid of this. I thought I was getting myself prepared, but I guess I'm not. All right, so here you go. This is the image. Obviously, it started as a linear image, so I put an STF on this just so you could see it. I also provided the individual channels because some people like to process the individual channels at a time. There was kind of there was a discussion started on Cloudy Nights about that, and we just kind of dabbled in it. And I'm interested in seeing what everyone gets as results for that. So if someone has a different technique than me, they're glad to show it. But after I do the DB on this, I still had some residual star color. And just looking at it now, you might be able to see this. I'm going to make it larger, and I'm going to show you where the main problem exists. And I probably wouldn't make that much of a deal about this particular star color, but two people in particular did a really good job of muting the issues that I had with this. And you'll see that there's some green tinge to them that doesn't necessarily go throughout the image. And DBE is mostly performed on the background. So that's where I struggled. There's a second image that we had a challenge on, and this one, I just want to push this way back because I don't even want to show you what I did with it. This is data provided by Eric Coles, and this is our winner of the image of the week, so it's a great opportunity. You've heard his equipment, you've heard about his skies, just great opportunity. This is some of the best data I've ever worked on, and we thought up a challenge where you would try and reveal as much of the core while also stretching the IFN, which tends to be difficult and requires a little bit of crazy processing. So that was one other challenge we devised. And the other one I'm not even going to go into right now. Maybe if we don't get to all of this stuff, maybe we'll go over some of the later stuff next week. Otherwise, I'll kind of cover it quickly at the end. But I just want to throw a solar image at you guys because you guys many of you guys haven't processed a solar image or even know what goes into it. And it's nice to have an image where you can go at it for 3 minutes and be done. If you don't like the version, you do it all over again. And that's kind of what I wanted to give you with this. But also some other things that I think I'll share with you as we get to it. But so for now, I'm going to jump over. Right now, I'm going to go back to seeing you guys. And I'm going to start going right through the room. And remember out there in... I know this screen is probably driving you crazy. Let's get it back. Okay, so out there, if you guys have questions about whatever we're doing, feel free to plug them right into Q&A. I'm also going to say this. I got to check out the Global Star Party the other day, and they're doing some great stuff on Saturdays. Sometimes it's more for our time zone, sometimes it's not, but it's great to check out. But it gave me a great opportunity to see what you guys see from the other side. And if you don't know what I'm talking about Q&A, and you hover over the top right of your screen, I believe it was, you'll see a place to click Q&A. You're either going to show your Spotlight or Q&A. Occasionally we'll share websites in Spotlight, but up on the top right you'll see Q&A too. That's where you ask your questions. Click that, it'll open up a box on the right side. So check them out, and also now I know what we're doing here. If you're out there and you want to get in the room because you processed an image, I shared the link in the comments, and you probably got an invite somewhere on your Google Plus page. You just have to figure out what the difference is. I am going to start going right around the room, and I know one of the people, a regular here, one of the guys who helps us pretty much understand everything going on, is right here in the room, and David Alton is right here. I'm going to put him on the spot for the first image. He actually did one of the best jobs on the gradient removal and star preservation that I've seen, and definitely one of the best that he's in the room. So I'm going to give him the opportunity to share his techniques. David, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, would you mind, I'm going to click over to you, and you're welcome to share whatever you did.
Okay.
I don't know if you put it on your website or if you put it on Cloudy Nights, but if someone does want to get a rundown, it's a good place to look at the texted out way you processed it. But for now, go ahead and share.
Yeah, I haven't posted how I processed this one yet. I was going to post it on my website and link it on the Cloudy Nights as well. I started documenting all of it, but I haven't posted it yet. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. All right. So can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
All right. So you know, the first thing I did was I actually brought up the individual files up here, right? And it was pretty obvious, you know, that there's a gradient in them. And when I combined them, you could definitely see the color, the chromatic aberration around the stars. You get these green fringing areas right around in here. And you get at the lower left of the image, there's some red fringing. So you get color separation. And one of the first things I tried was to see if I could use the registration tools to remove it. So I'd actually, you know, tried registering to the blue image, since I don't see the blue color separating out from the star, I re-registered the red and green to the blue channel. And it did help a little bit. It wasn't perfect, but it helped a little bit there. And this image that we're looking at here is a combination of a DBE pass on each of these images. So I did DBE on each of the channels. Then I did a star alignment to each of those. Let me bring up my star alignment here real quick. You know, the first thing I did was register to the blue channel. I went back and I actually re-registered to a synthetic star map. If you've not used this before, under script render, there's a catalog star generator, and it just goes off and references, you know, the large databases that exist out there for all the sorts of information about the stars. You know, you get, you know, how much, what the actual spectral, you know, quantities of the stars are, you know, distances, all sorts of information about the stars, and you can actually use that to generate a star map. And so I actually put in information. I went and looked up what the center of this field of view was, approximately what its size was. I estimated the image scale based on what I knew about Adam's data here. I knew he was using a star 71 with an 8300 based camera. So I put all that information in and generated a star field off of that. And then I registered all the data to that. And when I registered, I used the 2D surface splines and the distortion correction with a really low distortion residual. So that allowed it to do minor manipulations and larger scale manipulations of kind of a distortion map across the entire field to get the centroids of the stars to line up better. And that helped the most out of you know, all these registration techniques. That got it a lot closer. There was still some fringing and everything going on, but it was a lot better just after this pass. And you can run star alignment interactively.
David,
Was there?
can I interrupt you real quick?
Sure, sure.
Just because I want to, as I promised, I'm going to narrate a bit and kind of prod and ask questions. So like basically what you're saying is when I initially registered the data for one reason or another, the stars didn't perfectly line up.
That's right.
Yeah, and normally they'd say that re-registering over and over and over again isn't a good thing because each time it's going to change the data slightly, but in this case it's probably beneficial just because you have to get it to where you have to get it.
Right, so any interpolation you do, you're actually blurring or sharpening the image in the process. So you want to stay away from re-registering things if you can. But in this case, because you're actually having a cosmetic issue that was somewhat correctable by doing it, it made sense to go ahead and try it. Right.
Great. And not knowing how to say this mathematically, I'm sure that the initial registration parameters have a reluctance to do that, to actually warp the image. So in one pass with, I'll say, bad data for whatever reason it is, it may not move the stars enough to correct it. And that, by doing almost another iteration of it, maybe more specifically, you're kind of correcting it that way.
Yeah, and what I suspected was actually going on was that you were seeing some sort of atmospheric refraction that was causing the separation, or tube currents or something, that was causing actually a slight geometric shift in the image.
Yep. Or even maybe a focuser flex, because gravity is still there and it just has to be a little bit.
Right, a slight tilt or something, yeah.
This is Annis asking whether it was not initially registered to, I missed the end of that. Was it not already registered to a specific image? This would have been registered to the red channel. It would have been registered to the red channel in batch pre-processing script, and then I think actually with this one, I probably just took the results straight out of batch pre-processing script. I gave up on this one quickly to answer Annis's question.
Yeah, and I think the difference is when you run batch pre-processing, you don't use either of these two options, the 2D surface splines or the distortion correction. Right, it's a default star alignment, and those options aren't on.
Okay, and that's what gives you your registered image. Okay, but then you would register. Then you would use. No, then you would use image integration to.
No, after I did that, I just used channel combination to combine them.
No, yeah, I'm thinking in regards to when you're stacking manually.
Right, yes.
Yeah, so you don't have the opportunity to change the registration model when you're using batch preprocessing.
Yeah, you have a few minor options, but none of these.
Okay. Maybe another argument towards just manual integration where you just have that much more control if you know what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah. All right, sorry, David. I'm sorry for interrupting your flow, but please
No,
go
not a
ahead.
problem. Yeah. So, once I had the data re-registered, like I said, I did a quick DBE pass. DBE is pretty straightforward. I'll just do a quick one on here. In this case, I just did a really gross pass of DBE. So I just picked 4 points that didn't have any stars or anything on them. In this case, I know that I want, almost a very low order change, right? It should just be a gradient that goes from the lower right to upper left, getting darker. So, as long as I'm careful about where I put my sample points, make sure they're not on any stars or anything, I can crank the tolerance up really high, and the shadow relaxations, I can basically max those out, and the smoothing factor. The smoothing factor is what relaxes the interpolation of the splines between these 4 points that I'm going to place. So a really high smoothing factor means that it's basically almost a straight line rather than a curve. I didn't really change anything else. You can change the size of the sample radius or whatever you want, but in this case I'll just run it real quickly and you'll actually see the gradient image. You can see I basically get a gradient that goes from lower right to upper left, getting darker. So if I subtract that, and I'll just go ahead and discard the background model and replace it so it just modifies this image directly, you can see now the background's pretty even. So I did that for the four channels here, and then I combine them, which is what you see over here. And like I said, the chromatic aberration around the stars is still not perfect, but it's better than it was without registering the data. So now that I had this, I went through my process of doing synthetic flats. You can see there's a bright corner. There's kind of a dark region in here. I'm not sure if you can actually see that, through the video, but there's an area here that's a little bit darker. A dark corner over in the lower left is kind of brighter in the middle. So there's some what I'd consider smaller scale structures in here. And DBE and ABE don't do a great job of removing those. You really need something that has a finer structure to it. And that's where I start using the synthetic flats. Let me get rid of this guy. And doing that's pretty straightforward. I just make a copy of the image, and I bring up a multiscale median transform. And I typically set this to 5 or 6 layers, and I just disable all of the lower layers. And when you apply that to the image, what you'll see is that a lot of the stars and smaller structures go away. You've removed the geometrically small structures out of it, and you're not left with too much in there. So you can see I have a little bit of the galaxies in place, and if I really stretch this now, you can see a little bit more about some of these structures I was showing you earlier. There's a kind of a dark spot down here. There's almost kind of a wall where it changes color right along this point here. And then it gets brighter in the lower right.
That looks like my off-axis guider prism.
That's probably, you've got it on the lower. Yeah. So the next thing you do is you need to remove these structures, which is pretty straightforward. You just take a clone stamp and do your best to remove things. Let me increase the radius here. And just do your best to remove things without really changing any of the color information. And work your way around the image. And you do that for the whole thing. I'm just going to do a kind of quick and dirty job here. Normally I'd spend a little time doing this on each of these guys and being pretty careful about it. Right now, I'll just do something quick so you can see the effects of it. And once I'm pretty comfortable with what I've got, then I will actually rename this guy. I'll name him Flat Temp. Oh, apply my clone stamp. And I'm going to copy this image off real quick. I don't want to modify this image because I've got the full history of everything I did to it. So I'll do this on a side copy. Now I'll bring up Pixel Math and I will put in the equation for flat correction. So a flat is a division process. You're really dividing the image. In this case, it's $T represents the active image I'm going to apply this to. I'm going to divide it by the flat image. I use the mean of the flat to offset the data a little bit so that it's essentially positioned in the same histogram. If you just do a division, it's going to compress everything down in the lower left. And that's fine, really, but this makes things a little bit easier to see. So when I apply it to the image, I can actually see some of these structures disappear. I don't know if you can see that on the video or not.
I was able to see it.
Yeah.
Can you? Yeah, there you go. Can you flip? There you go.
So I'll just flip back and forth. So and maybe I'll increase the size of the image here real quick so it's a little bit easier. So that's without it, and with it. Let me actually stretch it a bit more. So I'll really stretch the image here so we can see it a bit more. It'll look a little bit garish, but so that's without it. You can see there's a lot of color issues and stuff in the background, and that's with it. But evens out the background. You can see that I didn't do the best job of the clone stamp. There's kind of halos around the galaxies and stuff. If you're really careful about it, you can get the background extremely smooth this way. Now, I will say that this process only really works for images where your subjects are very small relative to the field of view. In this case, we have a whole bunch of really small galaxies in a large field, so this works very well here. It doesn't necessarily work the best for all images. If you've got a lot of nebulosity in the field or a really big galaxy filling the whole image, like Eric's M81 image, it wouldn't work very well with that. Okay, so that's what I did here, and I'll move this image forward to that point. There was the application of the synthetic flat. And if you look at the history, you can see the whole history of your image. So this is everything I did to the image. You can see it's 36 steps just on the main image alone. You can see that there's quite a few images down here. These are all the support images I used. These are the original red, green, and blue images, the flat. So this was the synthetic flat I had. You can see it's a lot cleaner than the one I just made. Star masks, all sorts of things. So the next thing we'll look at real quick is the star mask. I don't know how much detail you want me to go into here, Adam. We could talk about this for quite some time. And
David, you can, if you don't mind, keep going. I don't know if anyone else in the room wants to contribute. If you guys are planning on contributing on this particular image, leave me a message in chat, and that way I'll know how much time we have. And the next image we'll get to in time. But David, if you don't mind, keep going.
Okay.
Good stuff out of this.
Okay. So the star mask, pretty straightforward. I generally extract a lightness from an image. So I'll just take a lightness image, and then I'll bring up star mask. I typically have some desktop icons that have things preloaded for me. In this case, I'm just going to scale back the scale, and I'm going to try to capture all the small stars first. So I'm going to increase the small scale structure growth so that the star sizes around the small stars are a little bit larger. Drop the smoothness and turn on aggregate and binarize. These options essentially say that Anything below a particular threshold will be counted as a star. So it binarizes the image. The aggregate kind of takes a sum of those values underneath to determine the brightness. And then you essentially set the midtones to look at the stars. And I'm going to actually take a small area here real quick and just pull it off. So I created a preview and then drug the preview off to the desktop so that I can just work directly on this little preview without it working on the whole image. And if I just run this on here, actually I'll leave that large size and make this one big as well. So I can see that I caught some of the stars, but not all of them. So I'll keep dropping the midtones until I see some of these other stars pop out. So I got a few more there. At a certain point, I start getting to the stars that are so faint they're basically in the noise. And you can keep working to try to capture those or not. But okay, so that one looks like it covers them pretty well. There's a couple. This really faint one right in this region, it didn't catch that, but you don't have to catch all of them for this process here. So those settings look pretty good for the small stars. So I just run that on the image. Shouldn't take too long here. And that captures most of the small stars. If I kind of move it over the image, I can see most of those are detected pretty well. And then for the large scale, I typically increase the noise, and I'll increase the midtones to like 0.5, bring the smoothness back up, drop the small scale, and increase the large scale, and then up the scale to 5 or 6 or so. And I'm pretty confident about those settings, so I'll just go ahead and run them. And mostly what I should see come out of this is just the brighter stars. So I just get the brighter stars out of that image. They're a little bit better fit to those stars. You can see they cover the entire star at that point. To combine these, I just use a pixel math expression. This is the image I'm going to apply it to, so I just do a max of $T. This one's called star mask 2. And I just apply that to this image. And you can see some of those stars get a little bit larger and brighter. I'll zoom in so you can see the difference here. So you can see some of those get a bit bigger. That's all we really need, so that we're covering the stars adequately. I'll go ahead and close this one and use the one I did before. So this is that same image here, and that's essentially how I create the star mask. And that star mask is critical for removing the color separation that we have around the stars. So I'm going to take another copy of this guy. I'm going to apply the star mask, and so you can see the stars are pretty well exposed. Not much else going on there. The fringes around the stars look like they are open to be worked on. So I'll go ahead and bring up a pixel math process. So you might have seen something like this before. This test is pretty simple. So this is an inline if, and it's testing to see if the red color channel, so $T is the active image, in brackets, 0 is the color channel you want it to work on, 0 being red, 1 being green, 2 being blue. I'm checking to see if the red image is brighter than either the max of the green or blue channels. And if they are, I replace it with the green or blue maximum. Otherwise, I leave it alone and I'll leave it as the red channel. So what this is doing is saying if red is brighter, so I'll go over to the lower right image where we've got the red color separating. If red is brighter than the other two, I drop it to whatever the other two are. So if I apply that, I'm not sure if you can see, but so there's before and there's after. So you can see that the red really drops away from the stars. Now we can do a similar thing with the green. I'll just move this down here. Make this the green channel. And do red and blue instead of green and blue. That's the comparison. If I go up to the upper part of the image and run that, you can see that the green was dropped quite a bit. Now, I didn't quite get everything. There's a little protrusion here that's kind of a cyan color. And to get that guy, I actually used a color mask. Close this guy off, and I'm not sure if anyone's seen the script before. It's available on the PixInsight forums. So I'm just going to run a color mask on here. And I'm going to blur it a little bit to even out the noise. And then I'm going to multiply it by the star mask. And essentially what this does is it cuts back all the general background area and just leaves the cyan part that's actually part of a star. So when I apply that, you can see that there's just these little protrusion areas that are left. So if I apply that to my image, turn on the mask visibility, and kind of zoom in around, you can see there's little protrusions here where that green, that kind of teal color is. And to get rid of that one, I just desaturated a little bit. So you can bring up the curves transformation tool, and I'm actually going to drop it a lot. I'll actually cut the maximum saturation point and bring the curves down quite a bit. I'm not sure if y'all can see that very well. But you can see that little teal area drops down quite a bit and becomes more of a normal color. So now looking around in the image at a 1-to-1 scale, you see your stars look a lot better. I'm not sure what that was.
I'm sorry about that. I don't know what that was. I had to mute one of our guests.
But that's basically it. I mean, you can see that the stars themselves look pretty straightforward now. They're pretty concentric and round. You've got some, yellowish ones, some whitish ones. You did lose a little bit of color in the process, so the stars themselves are not that colorful. And a little bit of the color in the background, you can see actually around this star. This one is really bright. Bring that one back up again. You can see there's actually a little bit, there's kind of a little bit of red tint here and a little bit of green tint here. In general, I tried to reduce the saturation of the background to hide those areas. So let me scroll through the image here real quick. And then at this point, I stretched the image and went through a few iterations there. Did a little bit of noise reduction, stretched again, and that's basically what you have. So this is 1-to-1 image scale. Get rid of these guys. I did some HDR and some other things on it to bring out the small little dust lanes in some of these guys. That's about it on this one, Adam.
Thanks, David. You did a great job on this. I was kind of surprised because I really struggled, and I think you all saw the challenges with it. Oh, I'm going to take the. Ooh.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Sure.
You ever served in an infantry unit? Ever served in a forward area?
Someone's playing some
Your life in another man's hands?
video or something.
Yes, yes, I do.
Sorry,
No.
Nathan. I hope Nathan was. I had to kick him out because I was afraid of what was to become. But
David, those are slick tricks on the star color. I like the masking the stars out and then equalizing the weights of the colors.
Thanks, Sean.
It's a technique I never would have thought of. That's why I was stuck on it. Has anyone else in the room processed this and would like to share any of their techniques on it? I know I asked previously. I would have loved to have had someone come on with Photoshop and work on it with that kind of so that they could see what you could do with Photoshop. This is one that I think Gradient Exterminator could take care of the gradient well, but I think David demonstrated what you could do in PI with it. Although with some color masks in Photoshop, it might give you that immediate, instantaneous ability to visualize it that makes it a little bit more helpful.
Adam, I'm working on it in Photoshop right now. If this goes to next week, then you can share that video in Photoshop.
Yes, as some of you have noticed, we don't have a topic for next week because with all of the posts I got on this, I figured that this will be extended to next week. And it's going to work out well because we are always in need of more contributors. But if nobody else in the room has any processes on that, I'm going to move on to the next image. And I'm sorry. Oh, no.
I have a...
Olga?
Yeah, I have a finished image, but I didn't record what I did. I could just show you what I came up with.
Can I ask you one other thing?
Oh, no.
Absolutely. I'd appreciate if you would dress me as...
They've got to make that easier. We're on someone's bad side because he logged in as a different name. Tolga, go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting.
I'm just saying, I didn't save the steps of what I've done, but I could just show you what I came up with on this image. On the other image...
Go ahead and share it.
Okay. So this is the first time I'm sharing screen, so I don't know what I'm doing, so let me see.
So sorry, my dog's barking in the background, so I keep muting myself. So hover over the left side of the screen, and actually, what do you guys explain to him? I'm going to let my dog out so he's not bothering him.
Tolga, if you go hover over the left-hand side of the screen, there should be a box with a green box with an arrow. Yep, you're up now.
Okay.
Perfect.
So this is basically what this is the I don't know. I don't remember what I did to it, but this is it. Basically, I got rid of the colors. You know, the I think it was green up here and red down here.
Did you use a specific action or process for that, or
the Gradient Exterminator? I took the channels, the RGB channels, and I ran them through the Gradient Exterminator separately. Then I just put them together. That's basically all I did.
Okay. Yeah,
I didn't do the full image. I didn't do the combined through the Gradient Exterminator. I did the separate channel.
Yonder rest. Yes.
So
In
that
Photoshop.
again.
That's all I did.
Yeah, Gradient Exterminator is a great tool in the Photoshop toolbox. I know.
I don't know if you guys see this, but there's like a little halo around the galaxies. That's what it did. The Gradient Exterminator did these. Can you guys see my mouse?
Yes.
Okay. Can you guys see these like little darker spots around the galaxies?
Yep.
Like I'll zoom in more. Yeah, you see that color? That wasn't there. The Gradient Exterminator did that. But it got rid of the full the separation.
There we go. You said you did it on the individual channel at a time, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that had something to do with it, with Gradient Exterminator. Did you use the same mask when you did it channel at a time between each channel?
No, I didn't use any masks.
Oh, no mask. Okay.
No masks. I said all I did was use the exterminator.
إذا دخل فتحت أبواب الجنة وغلقت أبواب النار.
Oh man.
So where did you post that link, Adam?
Yeah, I just realized that. That's the problem, is I posted it publicly. We know for next time. Yeah, so channel at a time, but you didn't use a mask. Usually, or I shouldn't say a mask. Did you circle with the selection, Tolga?
No, I didn't. I spent very little time on it, and as I said, that's all I did.
All right.
Another tool that works well for that kind of stuff is in Annie's Astro Actions. She has the remove vignetting, which does a pretty good job, sort of similar to the DBE. It also struggles a little bit with structure, so you have to do something similar where you apply masks, but use her vignetting removal, the vignetting. But it's a great tool that works very similarly.
Yeah, and I see in the comments here that there's a little bit of a chat that's kind of relevant. To remove red fringing, someone's asking, wouldn't it change the star color itself? And it's basically desaturating the star because you're equalizing the channels in the star. So you're basically setting, let's say it's at whatever number, when they're equal, it's white.
Yeah, that's essentially what you're doing, Adam. You're just taking a color that's too bright relative to the others and dropping it down. Now, if you have a little more red than blue in a star, if it's a red star, and you have a green above it, then it actually will stay red, right? Because you're going to drop the green down to whatever the level the red was. So it's not entirely changing the color profile of the star, but it will desaturate it some.
Thank you, David. And I'm sorry, I'm just about to kill my dog. So, yeah, that's right. So yeah, there might still be one of the two of the channels might be equal, but one of them might not. So you're still getting a little bit of color in it, but yeah, it's interesting because I gave up on that data. I see Hytham is in the room. Hytham, do you have any interest in sharing your? I don't know if you processed this particular gradient image. But I didn't know if you're around. You're welcome to share with us.
No, I didn't have the opportunity to touch the gradient image. I only had time just to do the one, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, and is that Eric's M81?
Yes, it was the M81.
All right. I think we've covered a lot of this particular image well, and I'm going to move over to Eric's M81. And if you're out there, we're going to probably continue this M81 into next week because this is fun data to process on. And I did promise Eric, make a promise to Eric that I broke. I promised to put credit for him and Mel Helm in the image somewhere, and I forgot to do it. So please, if you're posting this publicly, just give credit to Mel Helm and Eric Coles. You can find their names in a few different spots. I'll get them to you if you need it. But Eric, would you like to give us just like a minute or 2 minutes in what went into this image? I mean, we know your gear, but what went into your process of this image specifically?
Well,
what did you want to get out of this?
I can't remember. I think we had about 20 hours of luminosity on this, and so I spent a lot of time processing it. I've actually brought up the Photoshop layer document. If you want me to go over that in the shared screen, I can quickly run through it if you want. Take me about 2 minutes. Adam?
I think he's on mute for his dog. Go ahead and go through it, Eric.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to get my dog outside.
I just volunteered to go through the image on a shared screen from the Photoshop. Adam?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, let me see if I can share a screen. Okay, share. So what you're seeing now is just a stacked image from PixInsight. So in PixInsight, basically I use, I mean, I hate to admit this, but I use the script. And then I take all the registered images, calibrated registered images, and I go through, I maybe select the top, 2/3 or 3/4, depending on how the analysis comes out. Then I restack those, and that becomes my basic image. And in PixInsight, I just go through a couple of processes. First of all, I will do a smoothing using Atrius wavelets. Harry's AstroShed has a nice little video, so I smooth it out. And then I'll usually just do a manual stretching in about 5 or 6 steps until the histogram is spread out. Sometimes if it's a nebula, I'll enhance the nebula, but with this galaxy, it was so bright to begin with, I didn't do that. So then that's exported as a nonlinear TIFF file, and then it goes into Photoshop. And what you see on the screen is basically the image that's brought into Photoshop, where the galaxy is much too bright and the IFN is much too dim. So then the processing starts, and can you see all the layers that I have stacked up there?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'll just go through the layers and kind of tell you what I've done. This isn't necessarily everything, and it won't necessarily be completely obvious, but I'll kind of step through it as I remember it. So first of all, I just do a little adjustment on the histogram, because the histogram processing in PixInsight is somehow different than Photoshop. So I just do a bit of adjustment, just kind of get rid of the low end of the histogram where there's no data. Then do a small adjustment on the curves to kind of bring out some of the IFN. But you see that the nebula is way too bright. So basically, I take a series of layers where I select the outer portion of the nebula and then go into the histogram and then knock out the bottom where there is no data. And then from that image, select another portion of a smaller area of the galaxy, do the same thing with the histogram, and after 1, 2, 3, 4 of those, each one being smaller than the rest, actually there's 3, this one is something else, 3 of those, and I have an image which is starting to bring out some detail, but I'm not really happy with it yet. Then I'll go through and I'll do a starless image to bring out some detail with the high pass, so that's a high pass filter. You take out the stars, you do the high pass on just the nebula, not the background, and you layer that on using overlay. And then add in, by this time I think my galaxy is too dark. The IFN is not bad, but we'll work on that a little bit later. So then I take a smaller image and bring in some more of the background from the original nebula or the original galaxy by layering it on in percentages and yet another layer. And at this point, I've taken all the layers that you see. I'm not going to do this here, but I combine them, I merge them using just the simple, well, let's see. So you select all the layers. You then merge the layers. Merge those layers, which I'm not going to do. And then I take that image, I put it on top, and I adjust the histogram to bring out a little bit more of the IFN. And then that's the final image. This usually takes me a couple hours. I don't step through it quite that easily, but that's the image I think I sent to you, wasn't it, Adam?
I believe so. Yeah.
So it shows the IFN has been really strong. It shows some detail of the galaxy as far down as I think it is reasonable without making the core seem dimmer than it really should be visually. And then that goes in as the luminosity layer to what the ultimate HALRGB image is.
So and I don't know if you've demonstrated this, but just as you walked us through it, do you use PixInsight for your sharpening? I don't know whether you specifically said these.
No. I do all the pre-processing. I do the smoothing with Atrius wavelets, and then I do the initial stretching, and by that time I have a nonlinear image. I save that as a TIFF, and that's the initial layer that you see down here.
So then
that's this layer right here.
Okay.
That's my starting point. With a emission nebula, it's a little bit different because I want to bring out more of the nebulosity, and there's some tools in PixInsight. But for this galaxy, I just really exported a stacked, smooth, nonlinear image.
I got you, and I'm glad to see that because I think we're going to see. I think we're going to see a different method in PixInsight for doing this, and it's just going to be an alternative method. But I'm going to call someone out, Hytham. I know you did a process. Are you able to share? Do you have your stuff together to share your process, or?
I actually did not save the entire processes because I used both Photoshop and PixInsight. I didn't use just one tool.
Okay, I got you. Is there anyone in the room? I'm gonna, not because I don't want to hear what David has to say, but I want to kind of give him a bias. Is there anyone else in the room who's done this, whether it be in Photoshop or PixInsight, that'd be glad to share their screen? And if not, I'll be picking on David again. David, have you done this one?
Yeah, I have this one.
If you wouldn't mind, you don't have. I'm gonna kind of chat over your shoulder with this one. I'm gonna assume that you used LHE and HDR. What is it? Not HDR wavelets transform. HDR multiscale transform, right?
Yeah. I used those two a little bit. Actually, the bigger thing I did was using a multiscale linear transform to essentially separate the main galaxy from the background. That way I could stretch the IFN a little bit more, bring it up to a little bit brighter level.
All right. If you're willing, I think we'd love to see a little bit of that technique if you have your stuff together for it.
Yeah, let me bring that up.
Adam, you want me to leave this on screen share or turn it off?
At this point, I think you're okay. Actually, you could leave it there. You're welcome to leave it there so that we have a comparison. Not that any of us want to compare our work to our processing skills to David.
I don't know. I think Eric's image is excellent, and the processing you did in Photoshop, I think, gives a really good result there. All right, so this is the image that I started with. This is just a screen transfer function stretch on it. I actually did a little bit of DBE. I noticed that this whole side was a little bit brighter than the left side, so I did some DBE early on to level it out a little bit. You can see the DBE patch right there darkens the image a little bit, and then the right side is a little bit darker now.
David?
Yeah.
Before you go any further, can I interject something here, because I saw exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was tempted to do just what you did to level that out, and then I downloaded a series of other people who had done similar things and really brought out the IFN in a wider field. And my conclusion was that side is brighter.
So you think this is actually all IFN to the?
I think that's IFN, and that's how I processed it. But I had the same instinct. Oh, we got a gradient in there. But if you look, Mel Helm actually did this in a wider field in a 150 that he has, and I blew that up and registered it, even though it didn't have the pixels, didn't have the resolution. It had that bright area on the right side, so I left it.
That's interesting.
I was going to say, I'll back up what Eric was saying. In my wide field, it was definitely brighter on that side.
That's good to know. I figured that it might be partially IFN there, but it just seemed a little too bright. And when I brought it down, I didn't make a massive change. I only brought it down just a little bit with respect to the other side. But it's good to know. In future, I'll dig around a little bit further. I didn't have time for that this time, but
when I processed it, I kind of noticed the same thing, and Eric told me the same thing, that there was IFN on the right side and it was brighter. And I still used DBE the same way because I thought it just made it more dramatic. Even though there was like more of a diffuse IFN on that side, I think it gave it more drama by getting that contrast out of the background. So I think that gets into the part where it's really subjective.
Yeah, definitely. I also did a little bit of deconvolution in here. Let me back up a bit and zoom in. So I did a little bit of deconvolution, and you can kind of see, really zoom in. So you can see it sharpens things up a little bit. The stars get a little bit tighter. You get a little more detail in Holmberg 9 here. And you get a little more detail in here. I'm not very aggressive about my deconvolution. Don't like to push it too far. If I bring back the brightness and zoom in, you can see just a little bit of improvement in this area. So that was actually the first thing I did before I did any DBE stuff. Then I did the DBE. Let's see. I think I did a couple passes of DBE. And then I went in straight to stretching the image. So I actually did a couple different stretches, and you can kind of see, let me bring those things up. Those aren't it. We've got too many images here. All right. Okay, so yeah, this is basically what I had. So I had one image that I stretched way too far for the galaxy in the middle, and another one that was done with a masked stretch, and then essentially a normal stretch here on the image. And I combined the mask stretch and the regular histogram stretch to get a little bit of flattening of the dynamic range in here. And then I took one of these, I think it's probably this one. I think I took a copy of it.
Was that just an average combination?
Yeah, I think I did a weighted average, but pretty close. I think I weighted the normal histogram transformation over the mask stretch. So it just dims it a little bit, but not too much. To combine the stretch of the IFN image, so I get this brighter area of stuff on the outside, I used a multiscale linear transform, and I used a really high number of layers. I think I used 9 layers. And when I apply that to the image, you can see essentially just get, the brighter portion of the image in the middle. And when I use that as a mask for this image, so this means the inner part is going to be protected and the outer part is allowed to be modified. I do another combination. I just do a pixel math combination where I say the outer part is just the M81 histogram transform for the IFN image. I won't do it here. But I just apply that to the image, drag it over, and then you'll see the IFN come out. Just let me turn that off. So there you can see the difference. So you can see the whole outside, the outer halo of the galaxy shows up, and the IFN starts to pop out a bit. I think after this, it's mostly just doing some, minor histogram transformations, and then here I get into a range where I'm doing some HDR Multiscale Transforms. So you can see, let me bring that up real quick. So the first one I do is a larger scale one, and typically when I do these, you can see I'm using a mask. So I have the star mask clone, and that star mask clone, let me bring that guy up, is essentially a star mask that I've brought the background level up really high. HDR Multiscale Transform doesn't have a way to blend the result of it with the background. So you have a couple choices. You can use a mask to cause some blending between the two, or you can apply the HDR Multiscale Transform to a separate image and then blend the two together with pixel math or something like that. In this case, since I had to have a star mask anyway for this, I just brought the background level up. It's pretty straightforward. If I essentially all I did was use the curves transformation and set the black point to 0.5, and it just compresses the range. And you can see it just brings the level up. There's a weird thing with star masks. For some reason, it does this thing where I think there's actually values that are below 0, and so I have to use a pixel math expression to say anything below 0.5 after the stretch, knock it out again. And then I just apply that a few times, and it brightens up the image, compresses the range of it. So that's what gets used for the mask. So you can see it darkens the some areas in there a little bit. I do another pass at a smaller scale, another one, and then I start doing local histogram extraction. So let's see. So generally, I go the other way. I start with I start with a large scale and go down. So you can see some darkening in the separation between the actual star-forming regions of the arms and the dark areas, the dust lanes. You can see those get a little bit brighter and darker. The contrast increase. And I do smaller scale and smaller scale until I start seeing more detail show up in the center of the galaxy. And that's about it. I think I did one more pass in here to really brighten up the arms a little bit. And I thought the center of the galaxy was still a little bit too dim, so I brought it up a bit more. And that's where I left it.
Are you using the same mask right now with LHE that you did with Hdr Multiscale Transforms?
No, when I use LHE, I didn't use a mask. I just use a very small amount on there.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it's interesting. You created when you said when you said linear transform, you basically used that to create the initial mask that you then used to combine the two images.
That's right.
Okay, so you basically, in a sense, you did a little bit of what Eric did in Photoshop, where you really are just stretching one image and blending it with another. It's just how are you blending it? What modes are you using?
That's exactly right. You know, just using a mask to do that process, to blend between the outer portions with the IFN and the core.
Yeah, it's really cool seeing the way PixInsight does it and Photoshop does it. I think it just depends on how you think. If you how far you can take PixInsight. If you really think about stuff mathematically, I think you really do it. You can really do it well. I don't think I have that mathematical initial inclination, even though I consider myself good at math. But David demonstrates it so well. I think you just
yeah. I was just going to ask, why don't you blow that up? There you go.
It's a great image too. It's just insane.
Yeah, this data is just fantastic, Eric. It was just a pleasure to work with it.
And I'm going to flip because David has it pulled up on his screen and Eric has it pulled up on his screen. I'm just going to pull up Eric's version, and you can see, not that I want to put you guys on the spot, but you can see on the right side what Eric was talking about, where he preserved a bit of the IFN, and you can't see my mouse. So I'm just going to say the middle right of his screen, you're going to see this is Eric's version right now, and then when I flip over to David's version, you still do see some of the dust lanes on the right side of the screen. Maybe you are creating some false contrast in there, but you're also just creating some drama. That's where it gets subjective. The top left dust lane is probably the most impressive, the IFN lane.
Adam, I'm not seeing what you're describing.
You don't, only the guys that are outside on the YouTube side see this.
Oh,
you guys have to click individually each screen.
Yeah, well, I've been doing that.
I am seeing I am seeing Sean has this image shared. Sean, do you? I'm going to click your screen so I can see your version of it. Do you have anything to say about your process of this?
Yeah, I took it too far.
John is a PixInsight newbie for those.
Yeah, went over the limit.
But I'll say it looks great.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, so since you guys can see my screen, let me go back to like the original. So when I started, So this is the original stretch that you get with the screen transfer function. And then so what I tried to do to see what was the IFN and what was the background, and I don't know if this is right or not, but you can modify the settings for the auto stretch, and I like really increased the clipping so that I could see the darker parts, right? So they really stood out, and then I tried to pick the darker parts for my points to create the background extraction. You guys ever do that? Is that normal?
I can only answer myself. You can do that, but you're doing it globally, I believe, on the screen transfer function. So that anytime you use that tool in the future, it's going to do it continuously. If you hover over the gray area of the screen transfer function, and I'm still looking at your screen, John, if you use your roller on your mouse, you can zoom in on that. You might have done it too much. Just do it one little tab. But that screen transfer function allows you to stretch and unstretch it on the fly right in there. It's hard to get used to it. If you click, I see it disappeared right now, but I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about. Look at, I'm gonna click over to my screen so I can show you what I'm talking about, or just think you're gonna see it now. So I've got the screen transfer function right here, and I'm hearing an echo on my mic, so I'm sorry. If I hover over this and I roll the mouse down, see how that opens up? That's basically levels in Photoshop, but only on the screen transfer function, only the way it's visibly applied. So I can do that, and obviously this data's had something done to it. But if you really just want to see what's in there and you only want to do it on the very, very short term, you can do something like that. And you're basically clipping the data.
Right, but I was only using it to generate the samples for the background extraction, so I could see where the darker parts were.
Yeah, you could do it the same way, but if you use that tool I believe that you were doing it in, and I'm sorry because I know y'all are seeing my crazy screen right here, but if you're using that tool, I believe you're changing the setting globally. So then you'd have to go back into that tool and change it back to apply the STF to the next image.
Right, yeah, no, I changed it back to defaults afterwards. I just tried to use that to find out where the darker parts that might actually be the background are.
Yeah, using the STF to do that, definitely.
Sean, there's also an aggressive screen transfer function stretch. You can do it by holding Shift and clicking on the auto stretch, or on the top of the bar. You can see there's the auto stretch buttons up there. So you can do a normal screen transfer function or an aggressive one. So you can do the same thing here, a normal stretch, or Shift and click that to get the aggressive stretch.
Cool. So yeah, after I did that, I just did noise reduction, and then I did another DBE on it, and then really stretched it to get the IFN out, and then used layers in Photoshop like Eric did to get the core. But I went too dark on the core there, and really just tried to bring out as much contrast as possible, so it was a little overdone.
You know, Sean, there's a trick that I've used that might be helpful on your overcooked image on the core. I've had this problem before, and what I've done is I've just taken the bright core of the galaxy, not the core, but the whole galaxy, feather it in, and then overlay a percentage, and that brings back a lot of the brightness that you're looking for in your over-clipped image.
Awesome. Thanks for the tip, man.
Or the other thing that we all do is I just throw everything in a folder and start over.
Because it came up in conversation before the session, actually, I think last week actually. David, I'm curious, and then Eric and I were going back and forth. How many DBE points would you use on this image if you just had to venture a guess?
4.
4, right. Sean, I noticed you had a lot of DBE points, and I think, Sean, it is your question. It's your ultimate question. What do you do with gradients on images that are filled with with either a galaxy or this? And I think that that's where DVE shines. And you can use 4 points and just kind of get back some of that contrast that really makes the dynamic image. And it almost kind of leads into what we were discussing before with the glow on the right side. It's actually there, but sometimes almost just getting the dynamic range back and giving it some more contrast just makes it more better.
More better? That's good grammar there.
More better, for lack of a better word.
Well, I think on this particular image, any use of DVE is just you're losing data. I mean, in my opinion on this image, it's there and it will interpret that IFN as being gradient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I used unweighted samples. Was that a bad thing?
I don't know.
The weighting stuff is just for saying this sample is better than another sample. I don't think I ever use weighted samples with mine.
Yeah, I don't know. So, has anybody else in the room processed this and like to share off either their process job on this or their technique? If not, I'm going to keep it open-ended. I'm going to give you guys another week to process it. We haven't done the solar challenge yet, but we've gone over a bit over an hour, and I just want to open it up for any other conversation, whether it's directly related or unrelated. But anyone out there in YouTube land is welcome to ask your questions. Anyone in the room is welcome to suggest any topic for discussion.
I did a little on this.
Is this Tolga?
Yeah, if you want me to share.
Go right ahead.
Okay, let me see. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we see your screen right now.
Okay, so I'll start like this. This was the linear image like this, background. So I basically stretched it about 10 times. Well, actually, I don't know, 2, 4, 8 times. And did a vector mask like that to hide the overexposed parts. And so this was the first step. And the next step, actually, I flattened this image. And basically, I used your actions, Adam. You know that high pass.
Yep.
This set you have, Adam's Astro Actions.
Yep, the layered high pass filter.
Layered high pass with the star mask. I did that and did a couple of curves and levels, whichever one you like better. So that was it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thanks for using the actions too. Yeah, those actions I posted, I think they're probably still available somewhere because they're still hosted on my Google or on my Dropbox.
Just to see just to show the difference, that action here, I'll turn that whole group off. Can you guys see the difference?
Yes.
And I did each layer 50% opacity.
Mm-hmm.
About 45%. Basically brought the slider to the center. I didn't really pay attention to the... but I mean, I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah, it's definitely a great tool. I always considered it like the poor man's wavelets, because it's relatively simple to use and it kind of. We're not going to get into the solar image today, but what I really wanted it to replicate was, I'm sorry, I'm trying to click my screen back, the way Registax has their wavelets processing. It's when I first processed my first either planetary or solar image, and I used Registax, and I got into the wavelet section, started working on it, and I was so amazed at how well it could sharpen. And I guess planetary and solar is different than deep sky, but I was so impressed with it that I went on Cloudy Nights and I posted a question, can any deep sky processing software operate with wavelets? And one of the PI guys chimed in, oh yeah, that's what we do. And that was my introduction to PixInsight. And I downloaded a trial of it, and I had no idea what I was doing. Didn't do me any good. It wasn't until I realized that you have to commit to PixInsight that you're really going to get anything out of it. Once I did that, I got a lot out of it. But that was that's kind of my development in that sharpening action. Is I saw that I did it to kind of be the way Registax does it, but I'm glad to see people are using it. I'm not sure it's the best way of doing it. I think it's better to understand what the tool is doing and then apply it as you would prefer, but I think that's always going to be the case. It makes it pretty easy. Do you use a restoration filter in PI for planetary? You know, I have never done any planetary in PI, and I've barely done any solar in PI. I mostly do it in AutoStacker to Registax and Photoshop, probably because Photoshop is where I'm most comfortable. But I do want to thank all of our viewers for coming out in trying to. It does a great job. It would be good to see used by an expert. I agree. We need a planetary guy on here. We need a few topics, and I'm going to mention this. We are searching for people to help us out and host. We are going to have T-shirts pretty soon. I can bribe you with a T-shirt if you're willing to host a topic. That's pretty much all I've got. But I do want to thank everyone out there for coming. Next week we'll have a continuation of this, and I might try and throw in another micro topic if I come up with something. But again, thanks for coming, and we will see you next week. Clear skies, everyone.